Yay, I'm here.
All right.
Oh,
Well, here we are on a beautiful, sunny, freezing, cold day. I know there are people some from all over North America on this call, but just in case you weren't aware, right here outside my door this morning, it said that it was 46 degrees below 0 Celsius. That for our American friends might be mind blowing. That's damn cold out right now with the wind chill. Oh, crazy.
yeah, it was. When I drove Emma to school this morning, I was like, that's okay. I'll just like wear like my light coat. I'm just going from my house to the car. And I was like, oh,
Nope.
put like my full parka on and everything.
I know. I let the dogs out and they walk around holding up one paw at a time, like it's cold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in need of a warm up. Last night we were watching Beach Hunters, and I was like, turn it off. Like this is just breaking my heart. Like because at least when there's like no pandemic, you're like, this could be a reality. But when you're watching it right now in this kind of temperature, you're like, it might as well be in Mars. Like, so
I
sad
know.
to look at. I'm not happy for other people. I'm just sad for myself.
Well, it's a horrible tragedy. We have actually been very fortunate to have very nice weather through this pandemic, so we've been able to go outside. Except since 2 weeks ago, it feels like 2 months ago, it got really cold, and this is just higher. Anyway, okay, so this is really exciting because we had 240 registrations. Is that how much was it? Absolutely remarkable.
It's pretty fun.
We have 114 people online now, and the numbers might have stabilized now, which is great. So, and we also got a lot of questions.
Yeah, we do. And I know that there was a conflict here in Alberta for the time. So just so everybody knows, this is being recorded. So we'll be sharing it with the participants as well. And so, yeah, we ended up getting a ton of questions. So there's going to be a mix of, we'll answer some of the ones that have come in earlier and get some ones today. And
yeah,
where the convo goes.
All right. And just so you know, if there ever is a conflict with one of these and you still want to join, you just register and you'll get the recorded version sent to you, so you can watch whenever you like and as many times as you like if you're into that sort of thing. I think I would get. Yeah, sometimes we can be funny. You can be funny. I'm not nearly as funny as I like to think I am. Hey, I'm 48 years old. I'm like down to dad jokes. That's
funny.
It depends on who you talk to. Ask my kids and they'd be like, nah, that's not so funny.
Ask my kids.
Well, that's because they're still forming their sense of humor. I mean, yours are little and mine are teenagers. They don't laugh at anything.
Yours are embarrassing now.
I think I'm the one that's embarrassing to them.
That's what I mean.
Okay, so yeah, I already got one smart-ass remark that says I'm really funny. Okay, so where should we start? I mean, we have so many questions that came in. We already have a question on the Q&A. So at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A. You click on there, you can post your questions in there, and we're going to try and cover as many as possible. And Heather, you threw 4 questions into the invite just to get people's creative juices flowing.
Well, these were questions that had come from our last AMA that we didn't get to. So I thought these were some questions that I thought would be fun that other people were wanting the answers to as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to discuss, especially since, here we are. And I guess we can officially say welcome everyone. I think we've hit 120. So welcome everyone to this. I just want to say right up front, I know that we've been in lockdown for almost a year now. This is crazy. And it's tough times. There's surveys going around from all levels of government now, asking people about their mental health. And we have all sorts of statistics to show how challenging it is. And it's not just a pandemic that's a challenge. I I've realized that over the last year, we've all gone through a lot of personal challenges, and it reminds us just how important community is, having family and friends and stuff there to support in the good times and through the challenges. Just a month ago, my dad passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly. And I hate to admit it, but it was at that moment I wondered how many other people had lost a loved one in the last year, and they couldn't get together to have a funeral. They couldn't get together to grieve. They couldn't get together to share some of that. So I mean, despite the pandemic, we've all had these traumas that at some point or another over the last year we've all undergone, and it just reemphasizes in my mind that you know, community is more important than it's ever been. So thank you for joining us. Okay, so now with that, which question do you think we should start with? Heather?
No. Which one? Maybe let's just kick it off with the first.
Sure.
I don't know. What do you think? Now I'm like stalling because I just closed all my browsers because my internet is not cooperating today. So if you have it,
I actually think a really, I think actually, so we've got the 4 and we've got all these other ones to go through. Jillian Mock sent a question on the Q&A, and I think it's a really good one to start with, and it will address quite a few of the other ones to get started. She said, looking for advice on getting new counselors, so 4 new counselors, and re-elected counselors, there were 3 of them, working together after somewhat stagnant council. How do you get all of council working towards the same goals rather than fighting against each other, and moving the community forward rather than backwards? Huge question, and valid anytime and all the time. I mean, we have quite a few jurisdictions that we do work in have just had an election. Other ones are just having an election that's coming up municipally. Even if you're in the middle of a term, you can suddenly find a council that's split. And so how to focus them and how to get everyone moving in the same direction is critically important. And my suggestion, well, it's not going to be a suggestion. My opinion is that this is the most critical issue to deal with, because this is actually fundamentally what holds so many communities back. They go through and do a strategic plan, and which is a big document with the 5 dimensions of a community and 25 objectives you need to accomplish and 50 tasks that you need to get done now. And yet every community is doing the same thing. So they all are trying to have the same objectives and the same goals and look like everybody else. And I honestly think that most communities need to focus on their real unique strengths, the things that make them unique and give them a competitive advantage over other jurisdictions. And that means engaging the community to find out, what it wants to be when it grows up. Community building is not formulaic. I know we could go through a list. Everybody needs good quality water and wastewater infrastructure. We need roads. We need recreation. Those are every community needs those sorts of things. But how are you going to grow your community? And when you start to identify that by pulling the community together, a council needs to row in the same direction. And if they aren't, they'll all get fired. And that's what councillors need to recognize, is that, the defining what makes you unique and how you're going to grow, and that this is about the community, not about you, is the reason why they're supposed to take on the job. And I might add in a little professional development from some folks that have some courses available one day, or some professional development sessions like we do. Oftentimes having someone from the outside come in and say to councillors, grow up, get together, drop your egos, focus on building the community, or get the hell out of the room, takes an outsider. If you're the CAO or the economic development officer and you say that, you become enemy number 1, then that becomes pretty, I don't know. It just creates more controversy, because they may be united, but then they'll be united against you. Did you find the questions, Heather? Yeah, please.
Can I piggyback on that?
Please.
I think one of my favorite things to see in action is Doug's ability to hold people accountable. I think that's a fun conversation. Given that we understand it's so tough to do this with your own council and your own community in general. So I find it's nice to have to know exactly where you want to be as a council and as a community and where you want to go. And then having the conversation go in that direction and go in it, I don't want to say quickly, but with intention, because you're not worried about hurting people's feelings or you get derailed. So I have seen some fun or some fun conversations where Doug is bold when he holds people accountable. So that's my diplomatic way of saying that he will call people out. And yeah, actually, a little piggyback to this is the next question. It worked out really well. Was can you describe the process of how a municipality can create a strategic plan in 1 to 2 pages that still remains relevant to the and provides adequate direction to bureaucrats? So I love the 1-2 page strategic plan thing that I've done forever. And it was something I learned at Lululemon. And the intention behind it was you still want to have a robust strategic plan that has all of the who, what, where, when, why, budgets, all of that. That's really important. But it's really nice to have a 1-2 page strategic plan that is front of mind and that is readily shareable with anybody who wants to know what you're up to. It's supposed to be pretty, so people want to look at it, but it's also meant to be a living document. So you're referencing it all the time. And I find those really thick strategic plans, while there's a lot of great information in there, it's tough to reference and it's tough to keep at a moment's notice. So I have permission from Jean Barkley, who is a counselor with the town of Innisfil, to share theirs. So Doug, maybe if you just want to piggyback on this, and I'll bring it up really quick, and then we can just quickly show what one might look like.
Absolutely. Patrick, it's a great question, a very important one. And it's a lot of municipalities find it very difficult to come up with that 1 to 2 page plan. And ours always fit on the front and back of one piece of paper. And the way we do it is to first write your story, a paragraph about who you were, a paragraph about who you are, and a paragraph about who you're becoming. And when I say who, I mean the municipality. I know it's supposed to be a what, but I think it's a living, breathing personality. And then we focus on a very clear and concise vision statement. In the classes that I teach at the University of Alberta for municipal leaders about creating a strategic plan, I have some examples, and one of them is a vision statement from a municipality who will go unnamed, and it is 4 pages long. There is literally nothing that they didn't cover in what they're going to do, which makes it impossible for them to do any of it. And then, of course, you have your mission statement for the municipality, because the municipality, the council, and the administration are not responsible for the whole community. They run the municipal corporation, so they need a very clearly articulated mission statement about how the municipal corporation is going to achieve that vision, knowing full well that there are so many other players in the community, from volunteers, the business community, students, seniors, citizens at large. I mean, they all have to be part of achieving the vision of the community. And then values. And I'm kind of a stickler for values. I hate it when communities will say something like, our values are integrity. My grandpa always told me, integrity. I'm honest. If anyone comes up to you and tells you, I'm honest, they're probably lying, because honest people don't have to tell you they're honest. So I hate those feel good, that's all we, the things you're supposed to say. We're going to do public consultation. You will, until it's not appropriate to do public consultation, because you can't. You will have integrity, and you generally have to tell people that, especially when you don't. Instead of thinking of it as values, think of it as things we value more than anything else. So in Innisfil's case, they focused on beauty, the quality of their services, economic growth, focusing specifically on entrepreneurs and business growth opportunities, the heart, the downtown core of the community, which I think they're already working on.
Nope. Okay. I'm texting with somebody right now. Is Is Doug frozen or am I frozen? Oh, let's see this chat.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't realize I froze.
Doug is frozen. Okay, I was like, so I'm just texting with Greg. I'm like, oh no, because my screen is shared. I can't read the chat, so I don't know. But you're back. Where we lost you, Doug, was talking about downtown with events.
Oh, so they're the heart of the community, the downtown. I think they've already are doing an RFP to have someone create the visuals of what the downtown's going to look like going forward. But these are the things you.
Oh no, we lost him again. Okay, well, I think he was going to say these are the things that we value, that you value the most, and I think it's important just to encompass really that culture and that character that your community has. Just it's fun to share. It's nice to have. I also think that something like this puts a real corporation spin onto it. And then the other side of the plan actually goes into what the goals are. So this is something that we share with the public. So it actually goes into like our main things that we're looking for. And this was economic development. So I just wanted to show like a very quick overview of what a strat plan could look like on a plan on a page. And we've done lots and they all look kind of different. And the nice thing with the town of Innisfil is that they actually have the full economic development plan for their community residents to see. So obviously that's up to each community, but it was nice because then that conversation is just readily available for everyone to take part in. And just so you know, Doug, you might be frozen, but I've heard.
Am I still frozen?
Oh, okay. No, you're good now. But everyone's internet is like it's cold. Everyone's internet is just cold. So we'll have to we'll be good. But yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to quickly show that because I think it's a cool point and it's something that we really really value. And so, Doug, did you have anything you wanted to say about that, or are we good to move on to the next one?
I don't know if you guys heard or not. I just want to emphasize that instead of coming up with a list of values, come up with a list of things you value more than anything else. And that way it shows, you're not saying integrity and honesty and public consultation. You're picking downtown, you're picking walking trails, those are what you value more than anything else to build the kind of community you're anticipating will help you grow.
Perfect. So if it's okay with you, I think let's answer this question because it's come up a few times, but it's the first question we put in the email. Since the end of the pandemic is within sight, what would you suggest our community focus on and invest in? And a piggyback to that question is, just lost it. Okay. What are one or two things that the new norm that communities you think we'll need to prepare for? And what are the one or two things that is important, things that we haven't been able to do during the pandemic that will have a strong return? Thanks, Greg. So, Doug, what's your crystal ball?
What are the one or two things?
What do you think?
Communities. Okay, so what communities need to prepare for is recognizing investing in community building the same way as a form of economic development. Like we see communities all the time want an economic development strategy and a community development strategy, and those two things aren't separate anymore. You grow your economy by building a strong community that people want to live in, because it used to be the younger generations were moving out of the cities and into smaller communities for the quality of life. But now everybody's moving in there. It's safer. We appreciate the social network more. I mean, Amazon sends me a note every day that says, hey, you haven't bought anything in a long time. But if I'm sick with COVID, they don't send me a note to see if I'm doing okay or say, hey, can I bring you some chicken noodle soup? Right? Is it froze again?
Yep. But we can hear you. Okay. Well, you're back.
I'm back.
You're back, Doug.
And I am hugely frustrated by that. I don't know what you guys caught or not. I'm going to switch over to a different network. What did you catch?
This is all, it's like, okay, Heather, how well are you paying attention? I think where you left off talking about like, the demographics. And now you're
demographics, we're already starting to move to smaller communities and neighborhoods. But now every demographic is recognizing the value of communities and being part of a community. So it's a huge opportunity for our smaller communities to blossom, to see a whole new group of people that want to be in a real community. I mean, I use the example all the time. Amazon sends me a note all the time that says, oh, you haven't bought anything in ages. Why don't you buy something? But they don't send me a note to see if I'm okay or if I've become infected with COVID. They don't ask me if I need some chicken noodle soup, but our friends and neighbors and family do. And so all of us have recognized the value of community. And we've got a whole generation growing up that, they spend 40 hours a week at a computer screen like we are now. And when they're done, they don't want to hibernate in the basement and look at a big screen TV. They want to go socialize. And so, boom, our communities can grow because we're exactly what these people are looking for. But that means that instead of approaching your growth opportunities like their economic development strategies, you need to legitimately realize the community building is economic development. People are going to move to the communities they want to live in, and the jobs are going to follow. Not like they used to be 40 years ago when jobs moved to a community because it had low taxes, and then people had to follow the jobs. So I think, and that one or two things that are important things we haven't been able to do during the pandemic. Well, there you go. It just, everyone thinks, oh, this might set a pattern and we don't go back to socializing. I had a call about that earlier today. Are you kidding? People are going to be desperately craving those social interaction opportunities out in the neighborhood and community. So, I mean, there's your chance, not just to have activities to engage your community, but to have activities and social venues that you can use to market just how great your community is. And then, because people are going to be looking for that. So it's not just about recapturing your own population. It's about capturing new populations that are looking for that quality community to live in.
And I think, and this was already indicated in the chat box, that this is something that's going to be a pendulum shift here. Like we're already seeing it. We're already seeing it in the numbers. Housing prices going through the roof, pun intended. And just it's a really cool indicator. And there's going to be some challenges associated with that. And that's a whole other can of worms. I think to kind of piggyback a little bit more on what Doug was saying on kind of what's next, on some of our economic recovery calls that we're having, what we're preparing for and where we are starting to see indicators of where people are going to want to spend their money. And this is no surprise. It's going to be that experience based, whether it's a purchase or just an experience altogether. And so people are looking for those socialization opportunities. So when we look at what sort of things are going to come back, as one of the questions was posed, it's going to be restaurants, it's going to be conferences, it's going to be concerts, it's going to be food trucks, it's going to be things that get you out of your house. And so there's going to be a natural correction that's going to happen in the market within like a year after that. We're just going to see a really big boom we haven't been able to do over the last year. There's some argument in some of the conversations I've had that, people have shifted to online so much, they've created new habits, they've created new patterns, and that is all 100% the case. The interesting thing is that we have become confident with our online and digital worlds, but we are all sick of it. I think we're all sick of these Zoom meetings. And so there's going to be a place for a digital capacity, and especially working remotely is a great silver lining from the pandemic. But we're going to see people wanting to get back out and do things in person again. And I think as I'm saying it, it sounds really obvious. And so my insight would be, if you're not preparing for the end of the pandemic, I really encourage you to do so now. I would start thinking about what does it look like in early 2022. It's like saying that I have to 2022, like that's crazy. Because it's exciting and I'll start thinking about that. And the same way, I don't know if you guys saw the Super Bowl, right? Like that was so cool to see like an audience of vaccinated people. I was like, wow, that is encouraging. Like that is so cool. So whether it's going to be a music festival or a winter skating festival, I would do something like that and like that's from a community standpoint for fun, but then I would encourage your businesses to do what they can to get ready for an influx of physical people.
Well, and every community, Phil raises a good point. Every single community has this infrastructure master plan to replace those buildings, which are important because otherwise you can't provide the services. They have design master plans. Having a socialization, a social master plan, so that instead of just a calendar on the corner of the website that says when events are, actually deliberately designing the social experiences and bringing them together. That should be so critical. And then it moves into your communication strategy, your marketing plan. Then you have a better idea of what sort of infrastructure you need to continue with that socialization. So if you need a skate park, or if you need a community garden, or if you need a dog park, or if you need a big amphitheater downtown, or if it actually is the most important thing you can do next to putting in the water and wastewater infrastructure. Because if you don't have water, your whole community falls apart. But if you don't have socialization, your community falls apart. And so, yeah, Phil, it's incredibly important to have that. And yet so many communities think it's a nice to have and an add-on. And yet it's the very reason we live in social networks. Otherwise we'd all live, 100 miles from each other and have no socialization. That's what community is about.
And that's economic development. That is in its core economic development. And I think providing those, that social master plan is so critical, because there's lots of benefits about having a community that is great for socialization, but profits is a huge part of that. And when even a step further, when events are done really well, they make good money. So when you're intentional about your socialization and you're intentional about how it fits into the business community, it's a win-win, but it takes a ton of work, and it's something to not just kind of go into frivolously.
Yeah. Can we tackle two questions here that sort of go together? There's one about moving into the future with new demographics and making sure the workforce has enough staff development. That to me ties into so many of the other questions, like Joanne's question about barriers between town and county and discussions about amalgamation. And I'm sure there's some other ones here that apply to it just as much. And I'm gonna rant for a second, okay? We've got so many municipalities across this country and across North America that don't have the resources available to market themselves. They don't even have the resources available to write a coherent community economic development strategy that focuses on socialization, finds what makes them unique, and helps them find how they're going to grow. They don't even have the resources available to create, as Heather describes, the community persona. So you know who you're trying to attract, because every community says we want to attract 200 people. And we ask them, who's the first one you're going to attract? And they can't answer. And if you can't answer who the first one is, then how are you going to attract 200 of them? You need to know who it is you're trying to appeal to. And then it tells you what you're going to offer and what you need. But in order to do that, then you don't just need consultants, you need staff capacity. And if you look around this province, there are 349 municipalities. In Saskatchewan, there are 773 municipalities, and every single one of them has someone that's doing payroll. And every single one of them has someone that's doing budget and finance. And talk about duplication of redundant things. We need more people who know how to do marketing.
Oh, he's frozen again. Okay, let me channel my Doug. We need more people who are going to be doing marketing and building our communities. And I actually don't know where he was going to go with this. I'm not as good with Doug's rant. But I think the important thing is that there's so much duplication and there's a lot of meaningful work that needs to happen. And this is part of the other question about amalgamation and really pooling your resources and your efforts to make such a big impact. And when communities get together, that impact is And so I think that's where he was going with his rant, but we'll let him rant when he comes back. So maybe I'll just jump to, oh my God, it's just me now. Okay. Oh, wait, he's back. Hi.
Hi, I'm Doug.
Okay. So
Nice.
I took a shot on your rant. I was like, I'm going to keep this going because what you said was instead of the tasks like payroll and things like that, we should be, and then you cut out on the word marketing.
Well, we should have people who focus and specialize on marketing, people who focus on local economic development, people who focus on downtown design. And if a bunch of our municipalities would get together and quit thinking that they're an enemy on the other side of that municipal line that's just a stupid arbitrary border drawn for the sake of management in a world 120 years ago that doesn't look like today, then we could actually have regional folks that become experts in those fields and could do amazing things. And we'd have the resources available, like Phil asked, to make sure that there's enough trained staff to do those. They could receive the proper education and the proper training. But right now, everyone is just trying to survive, and they're fighting against, as I say, the person right across the line. They're fighting over their neighbor's pie instead of growing the pie so that everyone can be successful. And I'm not saying it needs to be amalgamation, but geez, drop the egos. This is not about you. This is not about your personal legacy, because too many people who focus on their personal legacy wind up chasing away everyone who could take their place, proper succession planning, and they focus on their name and their reputation instead of building their community. And what happens is that you lose capacity and then you wind up killing the community. That's your legacy. You need to drop your ego and work with others, and then you can build a legitimate legacy that can last for generations. And yes, Blake, you're absolutely right. When all that comes together and you have people who drop their egos and you start to debate policy, you start to debate some of those issues about the best way forward for your community. But when it's ego focused and it's about me, then it becomes very personal and very insulting, and that tears a community apart. And if it's about you, then get the hell out, because your community doesn't need it. Sorry, I get frustrated with that.
I don't think my rant was nearly, I think I didn't hit the mark. I tried to like channel you. And I think that just, it talks to like the bigger conversation, and it's tough in the world and how like the political structure and bureaucratic structure is set up, but playing the long game is so important. And when you remove that barrier of, well, how does this impact me? Such great things can happen. And this was a comment earlier, when you have strong policies and good policies, they are around way beyond people, and that's what you want. And bad, and that's unfortunate, but that's why it's so important to be investing in those things. And I think your rant is spot on. It's kind of like Rick Mercer's rant. I want Doug to do it like a monthly rant.
That's actually one of the challenges with all politics at all levels. Politics in itself draws people in who want to be leaders, sometimes because they want the position or they want the power. But the best people to take those positions recognize it's not about them, and it's almost a contradiction, and it's challenging. I mean, somebody asked, how do you get integrity back into politics? Find people that realize it's not about them. It's about the jurisdiction you serve, and it's the people you serve. And find people actually too that aren't so stuck on an ideological bent. Ideology is having a prescription for the way things are supposed to work, and you jam the world and reality into that and try and manipulate it to make it work. Ideology doesn't work. Good ideas that address real life challenges are what we should always focus on. But we vote based on ideology. The left is wrong, or the right's wrong, or vice versa, and the center has no backbone. And in reality, you need to vote for people who have ideas. And now I sound like I'm campaigning, which I am not doing. So let's move on to another question before I say any more.
Yeah, I think we've so many good questions coming around. Maybe let's start with maybe we'll just circle back to this one really quickly. and this is another crystal ball one, Doug, for you. So what are 3 little things and 3 big things you would consider mandatory investments in any downtown that would want to be ready for business for the next decade?
What are
3 little things and 3 big things.
Okay. I like the way you start your list off. Do you want to start with the 3 little things? I think.
Now I'm like, what are my 3 little things?
Twinkle, twinkle.
Oh, twinkle! God,
Twinkle
sorry.
lights.
Yeah, I feel like everybody's like so sick of me saying it. But yeah, twinkle lights are definitely on there. Interactive seating, I think, is a huge one, and these are, you know, the amount of main streets we go down, and when I say main street, I mean like a shopping district. And we see benches, and benches are great, and we have to keep in mind accessibility. And for inclusive access for everybody. I totally understand that. There's a way though to make your seating more fun, and it's a weird thing to have to think about, and it's a weird thing to think, okay, why am I like, I need to redo all the manhole covers or something that's like very pressing. But I would say interactive seating is a really big part of it. And I would also say making sure your signage is on point. And so what I mean with that, so often signage is very utility. And when you think of places you enjoy shopping, a big component of that are blade signs. So those are the signs that stick out perpendicular from the business. Am I using that word? Is it perpendicular, Doug? Am I using that word?
Perpendicular.
That.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Perpendicular.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And so it just creates cohesion. It creates, it's nice to look at, and people just want to spend their time there. And when you look at the psychology of how people are spending their money, and this was another question about Gen Z and millennials. Millennials are actually the most frivolous generation when it comes to spending money. We're the generation that's like, yep, give me the $7 coffee. Sure. Let's do takeout. Like, we're just the ones spending the money. Gen Z, on the other hand, is quite a bit more frugal than the millennials. So we have this cool opportunity to pay attention to the shopping habits and the spending habits of millennials. But it's interesting to see that we have Gen Z coming up right after, who's quite a bit more frugal. That being said, you have the bulk of those 2 generations having a very large appreciation for nice aesthetics, and they're prepared to pay a premium, whether it's the millennials that will obviously pay that premium, but even Gen Z is prepared for that, and they'll do quality over quantity. And they don't care about utility. It's just something that you have to have. And because we've been treated to the global market, especially over the last year, our bar as consumers it's just raised. And so we expect more from our businesses, and putting up a come on in, we're open sign, and just being a distributor of products will never be enough to survive anymore. And when you look at the businesses that are leaving the market, that's who's leaving the market. When you are providing a great experience, and a great experience has a lot to do with the aesthetical of the physical space. So that's something I would say you have to invest in. And I like to say it's not a nice to have. It is a cost of staying in the game. And when it's so funny, when I put together some of my recommendations, you will see twinkle lights on there. And I know it's not as simple as just flipping a switch and putting up twinkle lights. I understand that, you have to make sure the electrical is associated with each tree. I totally get it. I'm just saying these things have a very large impact for somewhat little money. So that would be
I always laugh at a few of the objectors. Twinkle lights, really? But you ask them what they do at Christmas, and they put up twinkle lights everywhere. I mean, it sets the tone and sets the atmosphere. And you even have some examples of very affordable to operate twinkle lights. I mean, they're LED, so they're incredibly efficient. And on an app, you can switch them to orange at Halloween, and red at Valentine's Day, and white at Christmas, and green in the summer. Like, it's amazing, the new technology that allows you to do this so efficiently. For me, 3 big ones. I like the big ones. One, bring back housing. And I know it's not cheap, but we moved all the housing out to the suburbs. And so everyone lives out in the suburbs. And then we wonder why downtown is dead at 5 o'clock. There are the next generations, millennials, and the ones that are coming after them are looking for, well, most of them don't want a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage house out in the suburbs. They want to live where the action is. And so integrating housing back downtown, whether it's on the second or third or fourth floor of a building with commercial space on the ground floor, second floor of co-working space, you need to bring housing back downtown. And I know that's not cheap, but it's critical to repopulate your core. Number two, I would say event space, green space, park space. I know we can't all do it, but Moose Jaw is still one of my favorite examples of a downtown that has a massive park for social spaces and walking and events. And they're very fortunate to keep it. I would never speak to them again if they ever did anything to destroy any of that. But we still have a lot of downtowns with some vacant space that we could reincorporate social spaces and parks and stuff back down in the core, which goes hand in hand with people living there. And then the third one, which is a big investment for a lot of communities too, old buildings and businesses. There are some vacant lots and vacant buildings that are sitting there with absentee landlords that are gone. And we say we can't do anything about it. You got to do something about it. And maybe in Alberta, we created legislation now so you can have a municipal corporation that can own land, but you need to do something to get those derelict properties and vacant properties, tear down the buildings, recondition them, get it ready, and then decide what kind of business you want. Maybe it's, we've got 3 vacant properties and we want 2 brew pubs. When those derelict buildings are sitting there, no one wants to buy them, no one wants to own them, no one wants to spend the money to tear them down, no one wants to spend the money to reinvest in them, and some derelict landlord just lets it go. You tear down and you decide what businesses are going to go there, and it's combined with housing that brings people down to the core, and it's combined with events and green space that create socialization. And you say, then we want a brew pub there. Instead of trying to attract one, you'll probably have 3 localized brew pubs saying, hey, we would want to invest there because we know there's people, they know there's housing, they know you're investing in the downtown, so they'll be willing to as well. So housing, events, and green space, and derelict properties so that you can do a new economic development. Those are expensive propositions. But if you're really serious about building your community, they're worth the investment.
Awesome. And Doug, do you have an example of a community that is doing economic development right? I would even say like piggybacking off of Moose Jaw. Like, yeah, they've done some really cool things over the pandemic.
Moose Jaw is one of those communities that is moving in the right direction. I still think they could be more aggressive at it. I think they could still integrate more housing downtown, deal with some derelict space a little better. But I mean, it takes time, and you've got to build public support for it and stuff. So it's actually why, and this, Heather, we emphasize to all of our clients, there's no such thing as success. There's only success in progress. So everyone's working on this, and that's a good example. I know Ryan asked who is doing regional collaboration or amalgamation well. The capital region in Edmonton is finally moving in the right direction. They quit calling themselves the capital region, which was great, because if you Google the capital region, they came up on page 4 on a Google search. And I mean, the best place to bury a dead body is on page 2 in Google searches, because no one ever goes to page 2. It's never found. So they finally called it the Edmonton region, and yeah, now you can find it. And then after that, you can find out about Beaumont and about Sherwood Park and about St. Albert and about all the other communities. And now they leverage their differences to attract more people instead of trying. They know they're not one homogenous region. They know that they're different, and that's what makes them great, but they have to be noticed. So they've changed their strategy. That's a good one. There are quite a few towns and counties that are working better together. They realize they're not competing. But of course, every day they have their struggles and they have their battles and they have their arguments. So there's no perfect example.
I think of another fun example when it comes to economic development in the region of Salmon Arm, and even the region in Lethbridge. They do economic development by also hosting like a co-working facility and a space for, like, as an incubator and a space for innovation for businesses. So it all goes hand in hand. I think that's a really cool model. I think if I were a betting person and I had all the money in the world, I would be opening up co-working facilities everywhere. The pandemic has shown when we weigh everything out on the balance and remove the pendulum, people want to have the option for remote working, absolutely. But people want socialization and people don't want to work from home. And so this co-working was already going crazy before the pandemic, and just like typical pandemic, it just sped it along. So when this is all over, the notion of a place where you can go and socialize, get great internet, and printing or coffee or whatever is going to be really important. And my asterisk with this is that if a community were to take it on, and I think communities should, I think it would be not even just a revenue neutral venture. I think it could be a revenue positive venture. And then that way you could have things like your visitor center a part of it. You can just make it this very cool hub for your community. But if you are going to do it, I would say work really hard to make it a beautiful space as well.
You know how I don't know who the hell says it, but you know how they say sell the sizzle, not the steak? That's sort of the way I think it needs to be with communities. Sell the socialization and the atmosphere. And because, I mean, this was before you joined the team, Heather, but we did a survey of thousands of people across Canada to figure out why they decided to live where they do. And if they didn't live in their hometown, or sorry, if they lived in their hometown and they just moved to the neighboring city, which was the thing to do, we excluded them. But for all those that were left, and there were a lot of them, 31% of them chose where they lived based on a tourism experience, and over half of those were a casual tourist experience. They didn't deliberately decide to do something. They sort of casually found it, stopping in a place for ice cream and stopping on Main Street to have supper, and they looked around and said, or they went out to some community event and said, wait, this is a really nice community. I could live here. So many communities are trying to build a subdivision and then sell the houses. And what they need to be doing is selling the quality of life, and then people will look for a house to buy. And that's what they will make them different and set them apart. So when, I don't know, I forgot where I was going with that, but it's so important that about socialization, that people are not, look, okay, so here's too many communities build that subdivision and they're trying to sell the houses, and they think the house is built with a 3-bedroom 2-bathroom 2-car garage, and they're waiting for a family to come and buy the house. But where does that family live? They live in a 3-bedroom 2-bathroom 2-car garage in a community already where they probably have a job. They're not looking for a house. They're looking for a quality of life and a place to live. And if they find the neighborhood or the community they want, then they'll find the house. So you've got to sell that first, which means your investments aren't in subdivisions. Your investments need to be in downtown, in the core, and in the socialization.
Awesome. I have a question here that has come in a few for you, Doug. So how do you get people who are resisting the changes coming to see the consequences of that? And why is it important to adapt? How do you convince them the status quo is not acceptable?
Well, I know this guy that does a presentation. I mean, that's the hard part. You need to have a discussion about the future and about the challenges you face. So we use the exact same structure for communities, and I'm going to tell you now. We use the acronym PCOS: problem, challenges, opportunity, solution. And so most people, you start to talk about the solution and they don't agree on what the problem is. They don't even know there's a problem. They don't know what the challenges are. They don't understand what the opportunities are. You've got to first have a conversation about what the problems are. If people keep moving out, businesses keep closing, your taxes are going to go up. Your quality of life is going to go down. Once you agree then on the problems, then you talk about the challenges and how it impacts their lives. And then you talk about the opportunities created in their lives if the problem gets addressed. And by the time you get through that, half the time they'll say, well, I've got an idea, I've got a solution. And then the only thing you need to do is decide which of the few solutions you're going to follow through on. And I think that helps bring people together. But too often we're already trying to talk about the solutions we want, and we're telling people what we want to say, and we're not really communicating about what the issues are. So agree on what the issues are, agree on what the facts are around the challenges, and then you can move forward.
Awesome. Love that. I love the example that you use. I think it's so fun about your Jeep. Do you want to go through it really quickly?
That's yeah. That's how I got a Jeep. We had when I quit as an MLA, I had a Ford truck, and no jokes about Ford, with like 280,000 kilometers on it. The seat warmer on the passenger side quit working. You couldn't start it unless the steering wheel went down, because there was a cable that broke that it only worked if you tilt the steering wheel down. The gas cap had fallen off a couple times and I'd replaced it. It needed new tires. So I'm like, I said, we're driving down the highway. I looked at my wife and said, I want to buy a Jeep. I've always wanted a Jeep Wrangler, you know, the Willys Jeep. And she said no. So I went back and thought about, why would she say no? I mean, and then I thought, oh, the problem is we need a new vehicle and we need to get a new one. And when we talked about that, she said, yes, you're right. You're right. I mean, it's unreliable. It could be dangerous. I mean, what if it quits on the highway somewhere and you're gone halfway around the world speaking and it's 40 below? It's dangerous. She's like, yes, I agree. That's the problem. And I said, here are the challenges. If we get another truck, because she had said you'll want another truck. I said, here are the challenges. You take it downtown for the kids to go to the dentist. You can't find a parking spot. It's too big to park in the garage, so it's always out in the cold. Then we have to get a car started to go with it too. I mean, it's big and it's bulky and it's on and on and on. She said, yeah, those are challenges. I'm like, but what if we got something that was easier to park? You could park in the garage. It was more maneuverable. It was still good on the roads and still had 4-wheel drive, which is why she wanted a truck, and still safe. What if we got something like that? And she's like, yeah. And about a week later, she said, I think you should get a Jeep. And it worked because it was her idea. We agreed on the problem. I identified the challenges. I identified the opportunities. And she said, that's my oldest. I said, and then she came up with a solution. And it was, when I presented it without discussing all the rest, there was opposition. But when I laid it out, it worked pretty well.
I love it. And I need to keep that in mind, because I keep doing it the wrong way. I show up and like, here's the solution. Let's go to Hawaii. And it's like, what? No.
Well, we all do, because we've already worked on the problem in our mind and already come up with the solution, and we pass it on. And the first thing people don't like is change. I don't want things to be different. Well, you have to take them through the process.
And I think the nice thing is when we paint the picture of what could be and what possibilities look like, I think important, because it brings people along in that journey as well. And it also allows for when people have an opportunity for input, and you guys all know this better than anyone, but like that, I'm going to say employee engagement. No, resident engagement and stakeholder engagement is such a critical part of any of the change work that you're going to do. But that inspiration piece is so important, and doing what you can to do your due diligence to get people excited. On one side of the coin, the other side of the coin, and not about this until Doug pointed out a couple of years ago, but making sure that they understand the risk of doing nothing. Because a lot of people think, okay, let's keep this out, let's keep doing things. It's going okay. And I'm hearing this a lot with businesses with the pandemic. They're like, it's okay, it'll be over and things will go back to normal. And I can't stress this enough. Like, no, it's normal. There is a very significant risk by not taking the change necessary to adapt and stay present and prepare yourself for what's coming next. Because with the example with the businesses, behavior has changed so much over the last year. It's never going to go back to what it was before. And it never was going to be what it was before. So having that inspiration piece and making sure they understand the risk of not making that change is really important for communication as well.
Yeah.
Can I? We have 5 minutes.
I want to grab. Yeah, I know. And we haven't, like, we barely scratched. There's 2 questions I do want to do, if that's
okay, you go.
So many. Yeah. I just want to quickly address Colette's question about thoughts on northern remote communities, like in the Yukon. I've been to the Yukon multiple times. It's beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth. And it is iconic of what I mean by finding what makes you successful. So when communities go and do a strategic plan that makes them look like everybody else, and they're trying to implement policies that look like everybody else's, and they miss what makes them unique, then they also create brochures that are meant to, market to everybody. And like, all we need at $1 a brochure is $7 billion per municipality to make sure everybody had a chance to read the brochure. And that's wrong. What we need to do is find out ask ourselves, why would someone want to live here? What kind of person is it? What kind of life do they want to have? What kind of housing do they want? What kind of events do they want? What kind of food do they want to eat? And create like a muse or that community persona. And then you don't have to market to the whole world. You only have to market to the people who are looking for a life that they could get in the Yukon, which is, I can envision they're going to be people who like some quiet, but still want to be really part of a community. They like wilderness and they like outdoors and they like, there are, I guarantee you, 1 million people in North America and 100 million people around the world that would jump at the chance to live in a community in the Yukon because it has everything they're looking for. And the couple of things that it's missing, maybe it's high-speed internet and connectivity so they could do business, or maybe it's the specific type of housing or some type of education for their kids, some specific type of education. Then you address those, then you're able to provide those things, and then you can go find those 1 million people. I mean, you probably, most of these communities will only want 100 because it'll change the dynamic of the community, but at least you know who you're trying to reach to. And then you can actually go online through the social media channels that they're on and talk to them directly instead of, blasting it out to the world on television or radio and hoping that they're catching it. And I guarantee you, there are 1 million people that want to live in any of those Yukon communities. They just don't know you exist, or they don't know that it's possible. And so telling that story is where it'll really change. And the other one I want to make sure we grab. Sorry, Heather, I know I'm.
Well, that's okay. Can I just piggyback on your last point?
Yeah, please.
Okay, really quick. That's why I really encourage municipalities and communities in general to go at their marketing purpose as if they were a corporation, because being the best kept secret, or like, oh, that community is actually surprisingly really nice. Like we hear this all the time, and it's like we need to approach not letting people stumble upon us. There's a very I think the marketing tools are so sophisticated now that we can actually be more intentional and what's the word? You can have a bigger reach with us, like with less investment when you do it properly and think of it from a corporation perspective. Okay, sorry, you go.
No, that's a great perspective. And the other one came in from Breland. They're trying to create policy documents that encourage community-led projects. They want the community members to play an active role beyond just public engagement, like owning it, creating it, maintaining those spaces. How do you do that? There are so many ways to do it. And that's why we work on our strategic plans to make sure that members of the public know they also have a responsibility. It's pretty, what I'd recommend to get started is to put a bit of a budget aside. It doesn't have to be big, and pick a couple of goals, like the big, hairy, audacious goals that you want to accomplish, and then have the public come forward with the ideas. And when you find the right one, the one that's possible, that's led by a person or a group that's going to dedicate themselves to achieving it, turn over the responsibility, turn over the budget and stuff to them, and make it possible for them to succeed. Because if they don't, their plan has to fit into the overall plan and future of the community, the vision you're trying to create, the people you're trying to attract, the businesses you're trying to attract. When they come up with that idea, give them that bit of budget, give them that authority and responsibility, and make it work. Because if they don't have a budget and they don't have any authority and ownership to get it done, then, I mean, you'll create a reputation that it's just about pretending to engage the public and give them ownership. And so that's a great place to start. It doesn't have to be big projects. Just let them have all the room they need to create the solution. And you'll be surprised at how big a solution they can create with those limited dollars. It's interesting.
That's 2:00.
Whew. Wow. I would go for another 4 hours. We're going to take all these questions and carry on. I think we're definitely going to have one next month, but we may even have one before that. There's just so many things to talk about. Like, really.
And just a quick plug, Doug's podcasts are just ready to go. There's probably, I think there's 9 now, and there's a lot of conversation about a lot of these questions. So please feel free to to just jump on any of your podcast providers to listen to those conversations, because it's pretty fun. And we'll have more of those coming out.
And if you guys have ideas or stories you want to share, I mean, we're planning out podcasts for the next year. So, and those podcasts are all about sharing success in progress stories with folks. So they're easily searchable. And as always, Heather and I are here. If you have any questions, I mean, we're an email or a text away. Please don't call. Usually doing something like this and I can't answer the phone anyway. So text and say, hey, it's so-and-so from this town. I have a question, because we're here to help. We tell everybody building communities is the single most important job on earth. And we're here to help you get there.
Yeah. And it's funny about the text. It's true. Doug, I'll like call him because I'm a phone person. I'm not a texter. So you can call me, but I will call him and like we'll get through it in like 4 seconds later. I'll get a text. What's up? I'm like, I need to talk to you. But Doug's so good at texting and I'm good at phone. So we you can reach us however you want.
Oh, well, who's the millennial and who's the Generation X now, huh?
I know you're the actually, it's really interesting when you look at texting and phone. When you look at the demographics, I'll just nerd out for one more second, but and this won't surprise you, the Gen X and baby boomers are more phone savvy when it comes to communication than millennials and Gen Z, which is interesting. My dad come over, I'm like, Dad, like, can you watch The Boys? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, just put your phone down. It's just so funny. So
yeah.
This
was great. Yeah, we've got to go. But like we said, we're here and we're sorry we didn't get to all the questions. We've got some for next time. And of course, ask me anything, send in your questions at any time and we'll add them to the list. And if you do, want to discuss before, just like I said, drop us a note. Okay. In the meantime, everyone stay safe, stay well, put on your mask so we can keep the economy open. Okay. And stay warm.
Bye.